Welcome back to That Rugby Podcast, joined by myself, Luke Bowden, co-host Alexander Hughes. How are we, mate?
G'day. I'm very well, thanks. We had a great time on Friday night broadcasting those two games. Both our teams got up, so both be pleased about that. And both quite good, close games as well.
Yeah, it was a good Friday night, good weekend of footy as well, I would say. I also watched the Chiefs and the Crusaders game, which was an intense game of two top-of-the-table teams battling it out. So, yeah, I mean, an interesting round, I guess. I feel like it was one of those rounds where it was the top six got stronger. Bottom seven started to work themselves out. Bottom eight. 12 teams, no. Bottom six worked themselves out. The Canes obviously came out, bet the Brumbies. That game was going to be a statement game for whoever won that game. Has kind of a tip of the cap now that they've beaten, 2 or beaten 3 on the table. Looking at it now, I don't think the Brumbies will be too disappointed with the way they played to lose by 5 points in the end, I believe. I know it was a penalty at the end to get them there, but I don't think the Brumbies will be too disappointed. Whereas the Canes will take the points. You got to play at home and win those games. Then later that night, the Tars beat the Highlanders, which was an important win.
Yes.
I feel like it was I don't know how to say it. It was a well-earned win, but they really, if the Waratahs had lost that game, they lost it. The Highlanders didn't win it, if you know what I mean.
100%. The Waratahs kept allowing the Highlanders to get back into that game through mistakes. Izzy Parisi even said, he kind of came out today and said, look, we're on our game, we're unbeatable, but we're not getting the little things like execution right. And that's it. It's like the execution is just not there. I think as well, forward pack depth is being severely tested at the moment, particularly front row, with a lot of injuries on that front. So, yeah, the front rowing and scrumming type of thing. I mean, Highlanders have got a fantastic front row as well. Let's not make two bones about that. But the Waratahs are definitely under strength at the moment. And another important match coming up this week for the Tars against the Queensland Reds, which is another one that they'll have circled on the calendar as an important one and one that they need to put away.
Totally. Then the Blues did the impossible. They went to Fiji and won.
We said it couldn't happen, but look, Fiji, they let us down. They let themselves down, and no, they still put a good game against a very, very good Blues squad, who I think are really starting to find their stride in this part of the season.
Totally hitting the stride at the right time. But yeah, again, due to a good effort at home, just now that statement is null and void.
Yeah.
Then the Rebels beat Moana Pacifica, and which was a closer affair than it probably should have been. The Rebels ran out to a big lead. Moana Pacifica slowly brought them back in. I think everything I spoke of in last podcast rang true. I think there was only just over 1,000 fans watching Moana Pacifica, which is just a nightmare of your Super Rugby. Although it's not the biggest game, the Melbourne Rebels, the fact that the Warriors were on the next day, the Moana Pacifica haven't been travelling that well. I think it all just bottled up into what we saw, and I'm struggling to see a way back. The more and further we go, I'm struggling to see a way back. For them.
Oh, yeah, I can't really. It's going to take some winning for them to get noticed, really, or some big name signings. Put some money into the team and lure some big Pacific Island names away from rugby league. I think is probably going to be what it's going to take, because rugby league has been draining the Pacific Island talent, really. When you're looking at rugby league, what is it now? 40% of the players are Pacific Islander heritage. So that top level talent that could be playing rugby in the Pacific Islands, but there's just not the support for it. It's better for them to come to Australia and play rugby league. I think Moana Pacifica has struck too late, has come out too late, and they need to lure some talent away from rugby league. I think it's the only way to do it.
I think there's an identity crisis. I really do. Like the fact that they're out of Mount Smart, it's like half of their players came from the ITM Cup, so it was pretty much a fifth New Zealand team, sixth New Zealand team, which New Zealand is struggling to support 5, So to me, it was just, it's going to be interesting. Going to be interesting in the next few years how they manage that, how New Zealand Rugby managed that. Because I can only imagine they're working at a loss. Like if you're only getting 1,000 fans turning up, you have to be working at a loss. So
yeah, unless you've got huge merchandise sales or huge streaming subscription additions. But even then, how do you know? Yeah, exactly. It's not like, exactly.
They're probably. I think the NZRU own part of it as well. So they're probably gonna, make way to make bank. But to me, it can't be a positive sign. And then we had the game of the round. I reckon. Oh, well, I like the Canes and the Brumbies, but Chiefs versus Crusaders. The talent on show there was just incredible. Damien McKenzie firmly putting his hand up for first 5 for the All Blacks after beating Richie Mo'unga now twice. So that's a big scalp, and he played well doing it. He had some moments, but that's what you get with D-Mac. I think he will have his moments of hot and cold, but when he's hot, he's scintillating.
If things hold up the way they are now, we're going to get in the first round of the finals Blues versus Crusaders, which is crazy, to see. And if we, I can't believe that. And then it'll be likely one of those two versus the winner of Brumbies versus one of those two versus the Chiefs.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about. Crazy.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Wow, that could be an interesting little tale. You could end up on the right side of the draw and not have to play either of those teams until the grand final.
Yeah, if you're the Blues and the Hurricanes right now, you want to sit exactly where you are. I'll be perfectly honest. You want to stay in 2 and 3.
Or Brumbies and the Hurricanes.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Brumbies and Hurricanes. Sorry, if you're the Brumbies and Hurricanes, you want to stay exactly where you are right now, because first match of the finals, right? Hurricanes have got the Reds at the moment. The Reds aren't beating the Hurricanes, and the Brumbies have got the Waratahs. Now that might give them a little bit of nervousness, the Brumbies, considering how close the Waratahs have come, but they've got quite a win streak, so they'll probably take that one. Then you're versing each other again, and this was a 5-point game. Like neither team's going to be sitting comfortable, but still, you're not having to face before the grand final. Either of those teams are not having to face the Chiefs, the Blues, or the Crusaders before the grand final.
Yeah.
And then it's a grand final, and anything can happen. Anything can happen. Someone could get red carded. Somebody could tear an ACL on the field. Like anything can happen once you're in the game itself. So just getting to the game, you've got a easier path.
Yeah, that is mental to think about. Incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Reds round us out by beating the Force, showing that they can beat Australian teams at least. But,
which I called. I said this is be the one that they would get.
But saying all of this, it was probably another little disappointing round for crowds other than the Chiefs versus Crusaders game, which was a sellout. Now, what is happening, and it's clear to see, is teams don't care about teams across the ditch. So we saw Brumbies, who are sitting second, versus the Hurricanes, who were sitting third or fourth at the time, and not many packed out into the Westpac Stadium. And then very similar with Allianz, you had Waratahs and Highlanders. I know two teams lower down the table, but a good chance for the Tars to get a win, and probably not the biggest crowd again. So you take that and you go, it'll be interesting to see how they turn out for the Reds versus Waratahs this weekend. Where is that being played?
Reds versus Waratahs at Suncorp.
Is it not Magic Round?
Oh, you're right. It is Magic Round this weekend. So where is that happening? That's a good question.
It must be Townsville because they're playing Super W in Townsville.
Yeah, well, it would be helpful if Google contained any information, but it doesn't. Again, Super Rugby, get your shit onto that. Queensland Country Bank Stadium.
Townsville.
Yeah.
Interesting. See, I was just thinking, Magic Round on. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what crowd turns out. Probably a little bit disappointed it's in Townsville, but I feel like derbies just seem to be getting the better of the games, and it's making it a more of a stronger argument of why don't we just split until it's necessary, if you know what I mean.
That's some really poor planning. To have the Reds hosting the Waratahs in the 1 week that you can't use Suncorp, basically. That you can't use Suncorp on any day. That's really poor planning, in my opinion.
It is,
right?
Definitely.
Why would you not just have it in Sydney and Allianz, and you'd be guaranteed to get a much better crowd? Yeah. That's really poor. Look, crowd numbers are very disappointing, and I think you're right. I just don't think that there's that many New Zealand rugby fans here in Australia. I don't think there's that many Australian rugby fans over in New Zealand, right? You're going to have some people there, but not that many. I mean, it is almost worth a look at going back to a conference system where you only play teams within the conference during the year. I mean, I think that's probably a better quality rugby as well, more evenly matched teams. Play everyone within your conference twice, right? And then you have finals. Yeah. So, excuse me. And you have top 2 teams from New Zealand, top 2 teams from Australia, and then you have I would say probably have. Here's a spicy way to do it, right? Top 3 teams in Australia, top 3 teams in New Zealand. Then you have wildcard playoffs for the last 2 spots, with the bottom 2 teams in each conference.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that could work.
So, or maybe not the bottom 2 teams, sorry, but the next 2 teams, so 4th and 5th, right? So then the bottom team, you definitely miss out on finals. You don't get into it. Then you have wildcard play-ins. So like this year would be like, say, Force and Rebels. If the Force and Rebels play and one of those 2 get in, and then you have, say, in New Zealand this year, it would be of all teams, the Crusaders and the Highlanders.
Yeah.
Playing for that last spot, right? And then you get in there and you've got 4 teams, and then that way at least one Australian team is hosting a finals match for sure. Mm-hmm. You do like the top Australian team, top New Zealand team, each play a wild card team. Then you have the 2s playing the 3s in the conference. Yeah. And then there you go.
I like it. I would just make it a six-man finals.
Yeah.
So you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you have the 2 conferences, and then 6 and 5 play off. So the 2 threes play off, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then 1 and 2 play off in each conference, and the winners of those go through, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah. So I get what you mean. So you have the bye round. So 1 versus 2. Yep. 1 goes straight through to like the semi-final. The loser plays the winner of the.
We've got it.
Yeah.
It could work. It'd be some magic to make it work, but you could make it work.
Yeah.
I just think the fact that you play everyone twice in your conference. Then if you wanted to, you could make it across so that you still have cross-code games. Let's say you have 3, just so we get a full season, because 10 weeks isn't long. So you just say, let's say you play 3 games across Tasman, but again, it's only in your conference. That way, I would say one of those games is Super Round, so you play cross-conference and Super Round, and then you have like 2 more rounds where you play cross-conference. Other than that, I think you just leave it like that. And then it works better. There's more derbies. There's less of this, like unsureness. And then, are we going to make it? Who's going to make it? Is what teams are making it? And just, I guess, more fans turning up to the rugby.
And I would actually say, instead of having 3 cross-conference rounds, you have 2 cross-conference rounds, 1 in Australia, 1 in New Zealand.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. So like two Super Rounds, basically. Yeah. And they're specific cross-conference rounds. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, well, get us on board. I did just want to mention this because Jeff Wilson mentioned it, and he said he reckons it's the end of the Crusaders dynasty after they've lost to the Chiefs. Now, I think that's a load of shit.
Yeah.
Because, to be honest, watch the Crusaders go and win this tournament from here. They were not far off beating the Chiefs. The Chiefs' defense is incredible. Like, what the Chiefs did in that first half was just incredible. It was a brick wall. So, look, the Chiefs are far and away the favourite team to win this tournament now. Like, there's no doubt about it. You beat the Crusaders twice in a season. You're pretty damn close to being the favourites for a reason. There are, obviously, like we've said, though, it's a journey to the finals, and their journey, funnily enough, could be having to beat the Highlanders or beat one of those, like, let's say the Jura sneak themselves in, like not an easy game, a physical game. Then you've got over the Crusaders Blues where it stands at the moment, which is never easy. Then you've got to beat the Canes or the Brumbies if they all go through as well. So it's a lot can go on before now and the end of the season, I guess.
100%. And it's good, making finals, the ramp up to finals, even just that much more interesting. So yeah, I'm getting keen for the finals to come around to see who actually is going to finish in the bottom half of the 8. Really, are the Reds able to hold on to their position, because they're 5 competition points above 9th place, which is the Rebels, right? So they've got some breathing room, not a whole lot, but they have some room for a little bit of error the rest of the way through. And Fiji have now proven that they can be beaten in Fiji. So
nothing's given now.
And Fiji is technically an Australian team based on the conference system and things like that. So, yeah.
It's all on. Talking about finals. Semi-finals happened last weekend in Super W of your comp.
Yeah,
and your girls blew a good lead.
What a great comeback by the Fijian Durana. I'm not quite sure how to...
Dura.
Fijiana Dura, yeah. I knew there was an Ana in there somewhere, probably in one of the teams. And that was great. Yeah, the Tars girls were leading by a double-digit lead at one point, and the Fijiana Dura they won the competition last year, and I think they showed why. Like, they have had a quiet season, but they've turned it on at the right time, much like the Fiji Dura themselves might be able to do as well. So, exciting. Red's hosting the Dura for the finals now.
Yeah, in Townsville. So that'll be, I think, the warm-up game to the men's game up there, which will be awesome. So it would have been good if your Waratahs had won, because that would have been a bit of a hype train. Talking about hype trains, the Six Nations Women's League, France versus England just broke the record crowd that we had here in New Zealand when New Zealand hosted the Rugby World Cup for the females, with 58,000, just over 58,000 people tuning up.
That's amazing.
For a game, which is awesome. This is, women's rugby is clearly on the growth worldwide. And I think it's a good time for them to be on a growth. The way you look at the game at the moment, especially the men's game, we're talking about all these rule changes, the hip tackle height, the safety. So the growth of the women's game now is coming in at the right time, where they don't have to worry so much about, these concussions and laws and, the game's gone soft, because we're already starting to make these decisions. So it's just at the right time, I think, starting to peak. And I think the next year, 5 to 10 years, is going to be really good for women's rugby.
Well, I guess... Well, I know this is not the right point on the run sheet to talk about it, but you're sort of leading me into it here in terms of growth of women's rugby. But I think growth in rugby is surprisingly something that's being talked about at the moment. So last week, Australian Rugby held its AGM, and some very positive statistics came out of those. Notably, the biggest one is that there was a surplus of $8.2 million, which for the first surplus it's had in 4 years, which is pretty incredible. And as well, if you consider 2 years ago, it ran at a $27.1 million deficit. So that's a pretty impressive to be able to turn things around. And so shout outs to Rugby Australian Chair Hamish McLennan for that. Although I think I agree with some posts I'm seeing on some rugby socials at the moment where it's time to just, button up. You've made some hits, you've done some things the right way. Just leave it there now. Your results are speaking for themselves. Other key statistics, and this is the biggest one I think that I'm taking out of this, is that school clubs and events, the schools showed the largest growth of participation, a 40% increase in participation in 2022 compared to 2021 of school by rugby. That is huge. Another key one, Rugby Australia's Get Into Rugby program for 5 to 8-year-olds saw a 20% increase in participation, and female participation in club rugby grew by 9%. Rugby Sevens also grew substantially, 36% in schools, 32% in clubs, obviously due to this relative success of the Aussie Sevens. And another really big statistic, the second year of Rugby Australia's partnership with 9 entertainment companies saw a 21% increase on average audience for the 6 home Wallabies tests, with a 58% increase in stand sport viewership across the England series. And for me, Rugby Australia's social channels saw a 32% increase in followers, with over 330,000 new fans, while engagement on these channels grew by 264%. So the numbers are there. We're starting to build up the numbers for these things. Let's start putting a little bit more effort into the socials now. Like, you're getting more followers, you're getting more engagements. Let's make them worthwhile. Let's make people stick around, right? It's all good getting these numbers boosted up, but a term you'll hear quite often is stickiness. Like, how sticky are these audiences? Are they going to stick around for the next couple of years? Are they going to stick around during this year, 2023? And that's what they need to really make sure they can do. Now, Rugby Australia's CEO, Andy Marinos, has stepped down. And I'm not sure if they've announced his replacement yet or not. But
I haven't seen it. I don't think they have, but yeah.
Yeah, but he's stepped down after a successful stint, I think. And I think there's no acrimony or anything like that. He's just stepped down and
time to move on. That's what he said.
Time to move on. And Rugby Australia has begun a recruitment process, it says. So yeah, look, he's just stepped away. He's done his job, right? And I think a lot of this current Rugby Australia board and management can say they've done their job because they came in to sort of rescue rugby from its depths. And we could see that there has been a growth there. The numbers bear it out as well. Totally. And yeah, it's just very, very well done to everyone involved in Rugby Australia, because that is truly bringing things back from the brink.
Totally, yeah. And I mean, I only see numbers going higher again this year if Eddie Jones can, wave his magic wand. You've got a Rugby World Cup year, so if you have a successful campaign, even if you don't bring it home, a final or a semi-final appearance where you put on a good effort, you're just going to gain a more interest. So I think, exciting times for Australian rugby. And Eddie Jones has already started the war of words between the All Blacks and the Wallabies at the G, trying to get the G full for a Bledisloe game, and said that, they don't just make supermen across the ditch. The Tasman doesn't just, generate supermen. So he's hopeful his Wallabies can turn on a Superman-like performance.
Let's hope so.
They play the All Blacks. But yes, very good for rugby in general. Like I say, a strong Wallabies team's good for rugby. And whatever's good for rugby, I am down for. Talking about Australia's biggest rivals, the All Blacks. Damien McKenzie, a man we've already mentioned on this podcast, has re-signed, which is great news for New Zealand rugby. Only to 2025, but he is the incumbent now, I would say. So I imagine he'll go to this World Cup. He has to. But how big of a role he plays will be decided by Ian Foster.
Yeah.
And then from there, with Barrett and Mo'unga moving, you would think he is the number one man in charge.
It sounds like he's sort of betting on himself that he'll be able to get bigger numbers for his next contract to herd him into the 2027 World Cup.
100%. Well, if he plays well, let's say he doesn't feature this much at this World Cup, but is playing well for the next 2 years, and in 2025, he's the first choice. He's going to be able to go ka-ching, ka-ching. I am the first choice, first five. Talking about All Blacks heading overseas, though, it was really interesting to read an article on Ian Foster and his thought. I've called it the Barrett Law. I'm going to keep calling it that, which is the version of the Ghetto Law, because I think if they're going to change it for anyone, it's going to be Beauden Barrett. But players going overseas and then wanting to play for the All Blacks. Now, it was really interesting in the article. He said, look, for the All Blacks rugby and for New Zealand at the top level, it'll be great. The depth would be great, would be able to pick players. It would be perfect for the All Blacks. He said for New Zealand rugby in general, he thinks it would be a shot in the heart and just could end New Zealand rugby, basically, was as deep as he went. So it was really interesting to hear that. And I guess, look, I don't think there's ever a perfect world of how you manage this, but I still think there's an opportunity. Like, I think at some point down the line, New Zealand rugby is going to be put in a place where a kid's going to be offered $2-3 million a year to go over and play France rugby, and he's at his peak, 24, 25, just one of the best All Blacks in the world. And to say no to that money when you're getting a third or $750,000, it's just not going to happen. I think it's going to eventually, that players are going to go that direction. So I'm hoping they're coming up with something in the back of their heads, because it's like one of those things, like Blockbuster and Netflix, where you can laugh at them now and go, that'll never happen, as Blockbuster did when Netflix said, we'll come and make a deal with you. And now look who's laughing. So it's one of those ones you don't want to be caught out by.
100%.
There was also European Championship rugby overnight, with Leinster beating Toulouse. So the Irish getting another one over the French in Ireland. But the other French team, La Rochelle, Will Skelton's team, getting a big W over Exeter to make it into the final. So it's another final, exactly the same final teams as last year, which is kind of cool. And if you remember, La Rochelle had the massive parade after they won it. So I'm backing them purely because of that, and because the Irish have become too good and they've won too much already this year.
Yeah, that's your usual line of reasoning.
Normally I'm against the French, but for this one time, I'm on the French side.
Okay. Well, no, so your usual reasoning is if someone's too good, you've got to root against them.
Yeah.
Which honestly I respect. It's it's at least it's consistent.
Yeah. There's sometimes I do change that though, and the only time is when I think history's about to be made. So someone like LeBron James is too good.
Yeah.
But I love seeing history, so I'll follow that.
That's fair.
Like if you're going to make history, so like say Ireland does knock the All Blacks out of the World Cup. As much as it hurt me to say, I want them to go on to win it so I can see history.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd hope that it would maybe just stop the Aussies from winning it as well. So, or that would be tough. My anti-French stance so much now, I would have to have a tough decision if it was a France versus Australia final.
You'd have to root for Australia, I think, simply because you live here. If you rooted for, it would be probably the end of the podcast if you rooted for France in that one.
I don't know if I could watch that final.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking how sick it would make me feel.
If you rooted for France and France won, I would quit the podcast. I couldn't work with you again. I just couldn't do it.
I couldn't see. Yeah, I think any other team I could get on.
I'd rather you not watch it at all. I'd rather you not watch it and just step out and recuse yourself from watching it than to actively support the French against the Australians.
Yeah, I'd have to do that because I couldn't support the French. I'm just thinking about it now and it just makes me feel sick.
You can support the Aussies for that.
Funnily enough, I did see an old reel popped up of us on my timeline, and it was of us talking about how for the French were the favourites. Would have been at this time last year, talking about how the French might be favourites going into the World Cup at home and all this rah-de-rah-de-rah. I'm like, well, they're still up there as favourites, but how times have changed that I was talking to them in such a positive light that now I want them to end up in dismay. So, yeah. I think that's it. That's all we have. It was good to get back out of the buys, I must say, in Super Rugby. But obviously, when you cover 2 games fully from start to finish, you've covered a lot of rugby over there. So, yeah, we'll keep you up to date with news going forward. And I'm getting more and more excited with international rugby coming around the corner, the World Cup at the end of the year, and all of that good stuff.
Get into prime rugby season right now.
It is. Did I hear that you're making a return to the field, my friend?
Yeah, I'm playing my one game of the year for Knox Old Boys this weekend against Barker Old Boys.
What position will you be packing down at?
Look, rugby's really positionless these days. You know, it's just about it's about your position on the field and putting yourself in a position to make plays rather than anything that's scribbled down on a piece of paper. You know, so playmaker, X factor, I think would be what I'd say. Yeah.
Left, right, out. Yeah, nice.
Equal left and equal rights, mate. You know?
Excellent. Well, I'm going to make sure I get that game downloaded, and I'll put all of your highlights on our.
Oh no! Please don't. It'll be absolutely shocking.
I just want to see.
I don't even know if they've streamed that game. I hope not.
I hope they do. I'm going to find it.
It'll be a
side-by-side comparison of us playing at the same time.
No, it'll be so poor. Look, I've never been a skill player. I'll say that much.
Just chucking a goosey. The one time you get the ball, a little goosey and a sidestep. Show those twinkle feet.
Little chip and chase over the top.
I'd back that. If you pull that out, son, I will put that all over our socials, my friend.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
That would be golden.
Yeah.
All right.
Look, depending on what the scoreline is, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, if you've got nothing to lose, you've got to go for it.
Yeah.
I want to see a match-winning dive in the corner try after a chip and chase.
Oh, God. This is assuming that I'll get my hands on the ball at all.
Yeah. Hey, how about a Matt Dunning drop goal? Why not?
I think that would definitely not happen.
Yeah, you'd be the ball would be taken.
My radar's so poor, I've got sonar. That's how bad my radar is.
All right, well, we'll keep you updated on Hughesy's big game this weekend. For now, thank you for joining us on That Rugby Podcast. We will see you later. Goodbye.
Peace.